From Del Rio, Texas, Rob Wade and Robert Garza. Two guys who dive. This episode of Two Guys Who Dive recorded live Saturday, 30 August 2014. Episode 113. Can You Belize It? And yes, I do believe it because I'm your host, Rob Wade. And again, my co-host, Robert Garza, a.k.a. Scubadog, is not able to join us. He is sitting in with his praise team at church tonight. He goes to a Catholic church, so they have a Saturday evening mass. So he's participating in that. So he's not with us this evening. So I wish him well with that. Even so, it's been an exciting week, and we're coming into now, of course, the Labor Day holiday. So happy Labor Day to all of you out there. As promised last episode, we will be bringing some additional video, pictures, etc. from our dive trip to Belize. Of course, all the time that we spent there was not entirely about diving. That, of course, was the main thrust of it. But, of course, you have this thing called surface interval, and we enjoyed quite a bit of that, partaking in the local cuisine, quite a bit of the local cuisine, and as well as just seeing the sights and just enjoying the fine Caribbean weather that was down there. So we'll be showing you some more highlights from that in just a little bit. Let me flip pages of my Surface Pro 3, which I love. The more I use it, the more I fall in love with this thing. It is just an awesome device. Works perfectly as a tablet, so if I just want to consume media, it works very well at that. The battery life is excellent, but then I can actually get work done on it. I can do real work instead of pretend work that you do on an Android or a iPad. So enjoying this bad boy a lot so far. What I haven't been enjoying is getting used to schools being back in session. When the schools are out, of course, you don't have to worry about... I don't speed through school zones. In fact, I get very angry when I see people texting and using their phone, etc., and speeding through school zones, because that happens quite a bit here in Del Rio, Texas. Hint to cops, you need to patrol the school zones much more closely. Patrol them when actual traffic is going through the school zones, like in the morning and the afternoon, because that's where all the biggest perpetrators are. So if you want to teach them a lesson, that's how to do it. Anyhow, when schools are not in session, my commute to work is actually very easy, very quick. But here this past week, schools locally have started back up, and I do not mind saying that has been a challenge to kind of rethink my start times. For the most part, I have my my morning process pretty leaned out, that I actually have, even if I decide to get up a little later, I have excess capacity. However, that assumes that nothing else has changed. Anybody who's worked with Lean Six Sigma knows that when you lean out a process, it relies on reduction of variation in your process, because variation creates waste in your process. The more differences in the way you do any given step, there's a potential for waste. You want to get near perfection, that last sigma of variation eked out. Well, with the schools out, that's a traffic condition that is manageable, predictable, within 5 minutes, say. So there's not a high degree of variation that I normally have to worry about getting to work, It's not so bad in the evening because school's already out. But getting to work, it becomes a challenge now when schools are in session because of a couple of different reasons. One, you now have all the traffic of people, families taking their kids to school, buses, etc., and people not paying attention to what they're doing. So they sit there when the light turns green, and it's like, oh, yes, I'm supposed to go. Meanwhile, the light's turning yellow. And the parents themselves not really getting back in the swing of things, taking their kids to school. I mean, it's their kids, you'd think they know, but it is a new year, new classes, new arrangements. In some cases, they're moving from the grade school to junior high or to high school. So, needless to say, they're still getting in the swing of things, so they don't know when to actually start to make their process more efficient. So, as a result, that's traffic I hadn't counted on, and so it's actually caused me to be a couple of minutes late a few days this week while I try to get my head around it. The first 2 days, I just kept forgetting, oh, yeah, I got to account for the schools. Oh, yeah, I got to account for the schools. And so now I'm starting to get into the swing of it, but, oh, how painful. I'm just glad we don't have kids. We have fur kids, but they don't go to school, so we don't have to worry about that. So hopefully this next week will be better. It's Labor Day weekend, so most of your government business, government locations are observing the holiday, so we're off Monday. So it means it's a short week going in, and it means that people will have slept extra long and probably forgotten, oh, yeah, school's back in session. So we may see just a repeat of this past week. Coming up next week, will be awesome. Great. Let's see. Movie reviews. Well, we were surprised by a request to have a little meeting with the founder of our local theater group last night, Fred Brockwell. He wanted to meet to talk to us about the next season. The local theater group, starting to plan their season for 2015, and kind of wanted to get an idea where we were at, because we love being involved in the shows, but we can't be involved in the shows nearly at the level, at the frequency that we used to, because we've got so many more demands on our time these days. We're just not slowing down. Here I'm 51, coming up on 52, and just not slowing down. Dive classes, involved with church a lot, volunteering at the local pet rescue. Every time we turn around, we got something coming up, something that we're working on. My schedule is very full. And then you really do have to kind of plan to have downtime. Otherwise, you experience burnout. And it really is easy to experience burnout if you allow yourself to say yes, or rather, you don't allow yourself to say no to things. So as much as we enjoy being in plays, the problem is, just checking the chat room, the problem is that they're so time consuming when we get involved with them. There are some people, it's community theater, so it's all voluntary. Nobody gets paid for it. There are those actors and cast members who really treat it like volunteerism. In other words, they don't place it as a high priority. They say, well, I'm volunteering to do this, so you really can't place any demands on what are you going to do, fire me, haha. But when Tara and I get involved in a show, we're all in. We're more than all in. We usually find ourselves making or buying our own costumes, doing a lot of the set stuff. I mean, there's a lot more that we get involved in than just acting or directing a show. So we have to be picky, we have to be cautious about the shows that we say yes to, because we do have to balance that time. That means we also need to ask other people or entities, whatever, that we're involved in, that we may have to shuffle time and say, okay, we can't participate in this, or we have to postpone that during the weeks that we're working on a show, so we can give due diligence to the show, and it's only the fair thing, only the right thing to do to those people who we are asking them to, for a fixed period of time, temporarily be without our involvement. So anyway, he was kind of trying to, Fred Rockwell was trying to kind of bend our ear and find out what we thought our availability for next year and thoughts on different things, because it is a struggle sometimes to get actors consistently to be in shows. So anyway, that was kind of a late supper meeting, and then we decided to go to the movie afterward. And so, but it had to be a late movie, so it was 10 o'clock. But it was the one movie that's currently still playing, at the theaters that I really had any interest at all in seeing. And because all the rest we'd either seen or just have zero interest. Most of the stuff that's at the theaters right now are like, no, thank you, but no. But we went to see Into the Storm. Now, fortunately, being a late show, it was a good thing that this movie is barely an hour and a half, because you get pretty tired. So we were done by, we were out there by 11:35, which was great. So thoughts on that movie? There were many aspects of it that reminded me a lot of the movie Twister. If you've seen that movie, which I thought was excellent. It was a great movie. Loved. Can't remember her name from Mad About You. Drawing a blank. Anyway, I thought it was a good. I thought Twister was a good movie. This stepped that up orders of magnitude. I thought the story was even better. The effects were absolutely incredible. I thought they were more realistic. The situations and the storm, the tornadoes, while maybe not meteorologically correct, I would love to get an actual weather expert's take on how possible some of the things that I don't want to give a lot away if you haven't seen the movie. Some of the things that developed in the movie, I'm wondering, can it really happen that way if the conditions are right, however rare that might be? But even so, the CGI was so well done. It was hard to believe it couldn't happen that way. But it was some great footage. I was wondering if maybe they took some actual footage from some real events and then built their CGI around that. But fantastic. There were some of the acting was a little bit stiff, but for the most part, it was pretty much spot on. You kind of cared about the characters. You had the classic scoundrel who redeems himself at the end. It was pretty cool ending, as a matter of fact. So I give this movie a 9. If you liked Twister, I think you will love this movie. And the added benefit of it is surprisingly short. I mean, it pretty much gets right into the thick of things pretty quick. It's almost done in the style of a found footage kind of thing, although the back story is everybody's doing time capsule type stuff. I've never heard of a city that as a city entirely goes all in something like this. I've heard of little school projects, stuff like that, but this was almost like the whole city was in on doing the time capsule thing, so everybody had video recordings going on. So it was kind of cool premise of putting that all together, so you're seeing it after the fact. If there was, if they were to change anything about the ending, and again, I won't give it away, I would have liked to have seen some way that they really show you the pulling together of all the footage. I would have liked to have seen the discovery of a particular piece of, goodness, got a dog barking at me. Oh. Ronan wants to make his appearance. Come here, buddy. Yes, Ronan was feeling left out and wanted to make his appearance in the show. Say hi to everybody. You're not going to say hi? No? You're on camera. All right, anyway. Put him back there with Ronan, who is, you can probably see a little bit of him back there, of her back there. With two dogs back here, which is typically how I end up, it's very difficult to actually get comfortable because I'm literally sitting right on the edge of my seat. So I give that a new meaning. So anyway, I would have liked to have seen them find this last critical piece of footage rather than you assume what was going on. But we'll, maybe a director's cut will have that. That would be very cool. I would watch the director's cut if it had that additional. What's the word? Epilogue. So, yeah, if you like Twister, I think you will love Into the Storm. So, by all means, check that out. So, the video that I was talking about is, I really kind of rushed today to put together. That was it was part of the delay today. We did some diving with a friend of ours, which I'll be talking about a little bit later too. And that ran a little bit later than I accounted for. That was bad planning on my part. But of course, I got to dive, so I had a great time. You know that. So anyway, I was scrambling when I got back to put the final bits on this video, and I'm not entirely pleased with it, but it's a conglomeration of snapshots taken with my Lumia 1020 phone, as well as some from our Sea Life DC 1400 Pro Duo camera, our underwater camera. So you get a taste of what the island is like. Some of the snapshots that I took that I kind of like, separate from the video, as well as the pictures of the town and the hotel that we stayed at. So it'll give you some ideas if you're thinking of going to Belize. You can kind of get an idea. Well, what do the rooms or what do the places look like? So let me jump over to the video. See if we can get this going here. And play. There we are, preparing to go. And here we are coming in to the big island, the big mainland of Belize. And then we had to get on a puddle jumper. And darn, I didn't realize I could have gotten the right seat. That would have been awesome. So we're taking off. It's a little Cessna Caravan. There's Tara. It was raining that day. It was raining the day we came in and the day we left. Fly this route like every hour on the hour. Now what's cool is I've flown the Microsoft Flight Simulator version of this aircraft. And I've actually flown Air Force simulators. Here's the actual Belize Ambergris Cay Airport. There's looking out on the pier from our dive shop that we used. There's the actual dive shop. The Blue Water Grill at our hotel. There's the pool in the forefront. You see, it's kind of open air. The bar area was pretty cool. My lovely wife. The coconut shrimp there was awesome. I was looking into the courtyard area of our hotel, and then walking past through there. Well, our rooms were up in the upper left there. I was looking out on the bay from the Blue Water Grill. Some of the trees there. One of the groupers. And a green moray eel. There's my lovely wife with her really bright fingernail polish. And this is just some of the folks that we did a lot of our diving with. With the couple from Spain that were our next door neighbors there. And the forefront's their daughter. She was kind of their interpreter because she could speak English. There's Tara. Yours truly with my Camaro 3mm swimsuit, wetsuit. There's another grouper. And of course, I always do some inverted diving. And walking out into the town, and around the corner to one of the main streets. This is their preferred mode of transportation on the island, is golf carts. I mean, they're licensed and everything. And they have insurance taped on them and all that fun stuff. This was Fido's restaurant, which was almost like a plaza as well as a restaurant. There's a bandstand. Part of the open air seating out on the deck. All sorts of old ship gear, etc. This was one of the Ramon's Divers Village was one of the hotels that we kind of looked at, but it was kind of pricey, but you can see why. It is a gorgeous resort. This is their restaurant. We ate there for one of our lunch breaks. I mean, it's just like Gilligan's Island becoming a hotel. Now, this is where we were headed to look at the booby birds on one of our dives during our surfer interval. This was some of the pictures from the aquarium, which was the third dive of the day. See, there were lots of turtles and sharks. There's me, all trimmed out nicely. Lots of turtles. I just thought this was funny. War Paint Beauty Supply. It was a restaurant we stepped into to get one of their little smoothies, and oh, they were good. They have a Kmart. I thought it was funny how they spelled it. Wet Willie's, one of the restaurants. As a matter of fact, we ate there. That was our last evening meal there. They have dive shirts from all over the world, which I thought was pretty cool. Their deck. This chocolate cake or cookie cake was awesome. Face to face with a nurse shark, and yet more turtles. Little box fish, and one of the very few lionfish we saw the entire time we were there. Saw lots of lobster. Ate lots of lobster. This was cool because it almost looked translucent. I hadn't seen any coral like that. Just about every other place on the beach was a dive shop. Now this is the Sunbreeze Suites. We stayed in the Sunbreeze Hotel. The suites were more expensive, but you can see why. Some of the ancient anchors that have been found. there was Scuba Steve. They have a playground from between the main road there and the beach. Belize Chocolate Company, their chocolate was exquisite. Oraguma's, great lobster. Just a little jaunt down the beach from our hotel. So we're walking away from our hotel, headed north on the beach of the island of Amistad. Sometimes of the day we're much busier than others, and we see just people everywhere. Lovely one. The building to the right, they would whip out the, you can see it's Magic Touch. They would do massages there, so they would have like curtains drawn up and little tables out there, and you could get a $20 massage. This place be jammin' at night. You hear them all the way from our room. Music on. Like I said, everything is right on the beach. And it's just so cool when you go by the restaurants. They have most of them have their menus right there on boards advertising them. So you can literally walk around, kind of glance at the menus without going in and decide, oh yeah, I'd like to eat there. And so then you just step right in. My friend Denise would love that place, Wahoo's. This was at Caliente. Oh, that was some good shrimp, yeah. Awesome. Coleslaw was great too. Lots of dive shops. Courtyard of our hotel. This is where we ate breakfast. They had this see how big that breakfast burrito was? Their little smoothies were awesome too. There's Tara doing her shopping. This was just too awesome a golf cart not to take a picture of. Now this is the dive shop area of Ramone's. And I thought this character was cute. Now this was amazing. We were watching this little baby swimming. Just hop in there, swim. No fear. No fear. The mother's not panicking, freaking out. That was the biggest dive flag I've ever seen. And of course we're flying out. We landed at the Belize airport. I just thought this was cool. Right there at the airport. Jesus is Lord. And then there's our sad face. Yay. So that was our get the next one queued up, which we'll need a little bit. Yeah, that was our sad face as we were leaving. You know, you saw the first of the videos, our happy face as we go on vacation, and then that was our sad face tagging it out. We were glad to get home because, you know, back to the United States and, you know, back to our little fur kids. Just missed them. But, oh, man, it was so nice down there. So nice. I know I've seen a lot of advertisements in various places of, buy Belize, buy land in Belize, and I think that it would be great. Probably not on the island though. I think most of that is going to be on the mainland, because on the island it is pretty pricey, and as you can see, everything has to be pretty much trucked in. They have to get everything brought in from the mainland. So obviously it's going to cost more, and if something goes wrong, you're kind of stranded. So I think most of your advertisements are talking about the mainland side of Belize, not the various islands like Ambergris Cay and Turnip Reef and some of the others. So that was a little bit of Belize above and below. So I mentioned last week I was going to talk more about some of the things you might want to remember as an international traveler. We've done enough international travel going to places like Grand Cayman and Cozumel and Utila and Curacao, places like that, to kind of have a routine down for most of where we go. And the more you do it, you find your own little efficiencies or helps or tips that you can kind of help, that you can utilize yourself. But if you don't do it a lot, it kind of, you would benefit from the wisdom of people who have been through the process a time or two to kind of share what the concerns that they've had, things that they could prepare for. Starting off, and it's one thing I didn't actually have in my notes, is deciding how much of your gear you're going to actually travel with as a diver. If you're really trying to travel as light as possible, then it's probably a good idea to only travel with your regulator. And by regulator, I mean your console, the entire package of your regulator console. Since that's the thing that you rely on most directly, and if you have it serviced regularly, etc., the condition it's in whenever you're going to use it, and then you're just connecting it to a tank, and that the dive operator you're going with is going to let you use, or that you paid for the use of, and you can rent their BC, stuff like that. Most of those places have pretty inexpensive rental as part of their dive operations. But that's good for you if you find it easy to get comfortable in someone else's gear. But if you really, really like your gear, then you have to consider that it's probably going to cost you extra to bring that with you, because it'll probably have to go in another bag, and most of your airlines now are if they're not already charging for any bags that you carry, they're at least charging for the second bag, which is going to be typically your dive gear. So that's going to be $25 or more just for that. So keep that in mind. Otherwise, you could just bring your regulator with the computer console, etc., and that'll usually fit in your carry-on luggage, so you wouldn't have to even check that. So that's something to consider. Understand the exchange rates. It varies wildly all over the world. They have their economies that fluctuate. We have our economy that fluctuates. And so what we discovered in going to Belize is that their exchange rate is 2 for 1. So it's for every American dollar, for every dollar from the U.S., USD, you get 2 Belize dollars. So if something's going to cost you $50 U.S. money, it's 100 Belize dollars. And, of course, the reciprocal, if something's going to cost you 80 Belize dollars, it's 40 U.S. dollars. So be aware what the exchange rates are before you go. Find out ahead of time if a shop, whether or not a shop or restaurant you're about to visit is cash only. That caught us off guard when we went to Warragumas. They do cash only. And we carry very little we typically carry very little cash on us when we go these trips because so many places do typically take your debit cards or credit cards. So that's a kind of a safer way to go in most cases. But not at Warragumas and not at a few other places that we stopped to. Warragumas was kind of our eye opener, and so we asked that question going forward, going to other shops and restaurants. We would look for the stickers on their windows that say we accept Visa and MasterCard and American Express and all that fun stuff. So find out before you go in, and so that way if you need to go to an ATM, you can do so. Now, what was funny is when we went to Warragumas, we were trying to order food, and they were like, "Oh, we're going to pay with a debit card." And they said, "Oh, we can't do cash only." Whereas an ATM, so we went to the ATM, got the money, and that was fine. The next, so we could give a tip to the dive operation. We want to make sure we had some cash for that. So one of the mornings we hopped down to that same ATM, which was actually a sort of a semi-outdoor alcove to a bank. We went there and tried to get money, and went through all the process, and then it was like chip, 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 and then nothing came out. It had no money in it. So they don't. Some of the banks are not very consistent in replenishing the money supply in their ATMs. So we ended up having to walk further down the street quite a bit to find another bank that actually was open and had an ATM that had money in it. So we got that taken care of. So make sure you get those things squared away before you kind of get yourself in a bind down there. Also find out if they require local currency. I don't think we ran into any cases where they wouldn't accept U.S. dollars, but it made me think that is something you definitely want to ask about. The more native that you decide to interact with them, by that I mean if you stick to the touristy areas of a place you're visiting, more than likely they're going to accept credit and debit cards, and more than likely they're going to accept other countries' money, particularly U.S., because we travel to those places more readily than other countries do, for obvious reasons. But if you decide to look for your bargains deeper into town, because they sell typically to the locals, now they may not actually accept non-native monies. So make sure you find that out ahead of time if there are some places that you plan to shop that only accept money from that country. Like I said, excuse me, we didn't run into that ourselves, but it's definitely something to look out for. Decide ahead of time if you plan on doing a lot of shopping. If you are, especially if a lot of the shopping is going to be in clothing, like leisure wear, t-shirts, those shorts, those kinds of things, you may want to go really, really light on the clothing you bring with you. A couple of bits for travel. As a matter of fact, I always have a spare shirt and maybe shorts in my carry-on bag, just in case. Because we have had the situation where you got stuck because of a late flight, and it'd be nice to have a change of clothes for that extra day of travel that you've now found yourself having to take. So think about the clothing. Think about what you might be shopping for. If you're going to be shopping for a lot of stuff, you know what? Unless it's going to be given away to friends and family, you might want to think about leaving half your clothes at home, and so you have that space to put the clothing that you buy, because you might as well just buy it and then wear it. And depending on the hotel you're staying at, you may have the opportunity to wash some clothes as well. There wasn't a way to do that at our hotel, at Sunbreeze Hotel. you could, for a nominal fee, well, I wouldn't say it was nominal. It was nominal. It was kind of pricey. But you could give them your garments to clean, and they would bring them back. So, let's see. Oh, and if you travel light enough, you could probably then consolidate some of your scuba gear into your bag number one kind of thing. So it might save you some money. Let's see. Unless you plan on shipping a bunch of things home. There have been people who would go there and shop like crazy, and they turn around, package them up, and mail them home, so that it still frees up their luggage, and it probably travels safer in some cases than it would be in your luggage, depending on how badly your luggage gets beaten up. Don't bring batteries for things like dive lights and that kind of stuff. Batteries quickly escalate the weight of the stuff you're carrying. Just remember, though, once you get to your location, that you actually buy the batteries that you need for stuff. Okay? Don't empty all your dive lights of batteries and other devices of batteries, only to get there and forget to buy batteries to put in them, and then you can toss them again before you head out of country. Even if you don't plan on doing any actual night diving, I think it's a good idea to still at least bring your BC light. And it's, we're going to be one of those smaller ones that typically are attached to your BC on a D-ring or a retractor. I have mine on a retractor. It makes it really convenient because I can just pull it out, shine my light on something, and let go, and it's right back here. So even if you aren't planning on doing any night diving, consider bringing a non-heavy BC light, so that when you are if you do any deeper diving, you may benefit from having a light. If you go looking into like cave areas, like if you saw last week's video where we included some of the footage from the Blue Hole, that was middle of the day. That wasn't a night dive at all. Well, actually, it was morning. But definitely, I was glad I had my video light on my camera, so I could see everything with that. That lit up everything nicely. But everybody else, my wife included, it was a good thing that they had their lights, so that they could see inside the, not really cave per se, but where the stalactites and stalagmites were. So it's probably a good idea to at least bring that. In general, plan for tipping, and it can vary, but you can check what the conventions are, what the tradition is at with the dive operation you're going with. But it's pretty much the going rate is roughly $5 per tank that you tip the captain, who then will distribute that through the rest of the crew. So for Tara and I, we did 2 dives on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And we did a 3rd dive on the Monday. So, and that's so the 2 of us, so any given day, that's $20 basically of tips that we give. So $20 times the 4 days, and then an extra. Then one day we had 3 dives. So that money can add up, but you make sure you account for that as part of your budget. You may be thinking, oh well, I paid for the trip. The cost of there's a reason why they've set the prices for diving with this company or that company, where they have, because they've calculated that in. Well, yes and no. There's a lot. Part of the competition for your favor is how the crew treats you on board the boats, as well as while you're on your dive. So take that into consideration. But the going rate, the convention, is $5 per tank, and then you may want to even ask the next question of the captain, or if they have a liaison in their office, is ask them, Do we tip them individually? Do we just tip the captain and then he distributes it how he sees fit amongst the crew? More often than not, if you tip the captain, you got it covered. But we have been some places, especially in Florida, where you kind of tip individually. And as a matter of fact, most of those times are going to be where you may have a pretty large boat and there's the captain, and then you have everybody on board is kind of split up amongst the crew. So there may be 4 or 5 of you, 6 of you that are diving with this dive master, and another group of you are diving with this dive master. And so you would tip the captain and the dive master that was actually taking care of you during your dives. So that's another way that it can happen. But at least plan for roughly $5 per tank per person. So, and then also find out if tipping is typically done each day or at the end of the trip if you're diving with a single operator. Now, since we dove with Hugh Parkey's dive operation, which was their part of the hotel, every day except for the Monday that we did Blue Hole, which we went with Ramon's because Parkey's was not doing a Blue Hole trip. Find out if it's typically you tip at the end of each day or at the end of the trip. Now, obviously, for the Ramon's trip, the Ramon's Diver Village, we tipped at the end when we were getting off the boat because we weren't going to be seeing them again, so we tipped them separately. But that's just some things to consider. All right. So, as I said earlier in the episode, check the chat room real quick. Nobody's in there. Oops. How do I get the pictures open? Wow. All right, there we go. Did a dive today. The daughter of a coworker of my wife's was coming into town to visit her parents, and she's a certified diver. She got certified in January of this year and has not had that many dives under her belt, but she was anxious to get some diving done here in Del Rio at Lake Amistad. So I was like, sure, I'm Scubadog. I'll dive with anybody. I just want to get in the water. So I was like, yeah, let's do this. And then my wife, who's normally a saltwater snob, since she's really more the friend of this person, Kim, I was pretty much meeting her for the first time, decided to come along as well. And I'm glad she did because I love diving with my wife. So we get out there, watching a little bit of a storm cell, kind of isolated storm move off. And so we got everything set up and kind of went over the steps with her just to kind of reinforce. New divers, the skills are still kind of hazy a little bit. The more you do it, the easier it gets, the more committed to memory it becomes, the more part of you it becomes. So anyway, we got everything set up. When I was bringing the camera, because I figured she'd probably want, maybe pictures, some video of first dive in Amistad. Woohoo! So we get out there, and she was having a little problem with getting down, so we had to add a little bit of weight. So, this is one of those things you kind of, when somebody's coming into the area for the first time and you're the knowledgeable person, help them through a number of these things, especially if they're a newer diver. Be perceptive and listen to what they're saying. Be ready don't just leave them to flounder. Well, you're a certified diver. I shouldn't have to help you out. No, that's not the attitude to take. You want to take the attitude of, I'm the experienced diver. I know this area. I'm providing some of the gear, if that's the case. I want to make sure your first experience diving here is a positively memorable one, not a negatively memorable one. So anyway, we strapped some more weight on her. She was able to get down. She let us know, which was the right thing to do, that she is a slow equalizer. Has a little bit difficulty equalizing her ears, so she'd be descending slow. And of course, I made it clear, That's good. No issues. We dive with people who are very, 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 very slow with equalization. Can it be annoying? Yes. If you let it be annoying, it can be annoying. But you just realize if you want to enjoy a good dive, a safe dive, and you want the other person to enjoy a good dive and a safe dive, then you accommodate the uniqueness of every diver. It shouldn't come across as a burden, and you shouldn't reflect it back onto them as if it's a burden. So I made it very, very clear, no issue there. We have divers like that. So you take whatever's the safe amount of time to get down with equalized ears with no damage. So we got down, worked through our dive. She hit a point where she was having some difficulty equalizing, but quickly got that under control. And we slowly worked our way down. And the thing about, which you probably won't be able to tell from the video, one of the things about Spur 454 in Del Rio at Lake Amistad, let me get a drink here, is those cliff areas actually cut inward, which is why it's actually safer, much safer, to jump and dive off of those than, say, Scuba Cove out of Diablo East, because if you've seen previous episodes where we've shown pictures of the Scuba Cove area, you'll see that that out at Scuba Cove, when you look at the top of the cliffs, they come down and then they come out and then they come down and they come out. So depending on the lake level, you could be in a world of hurt diving off one of those cliffs, because you may hit, if you go in deep, you may hurt yourself or kill yourself hitting a ledge below. So, but at Spur 454, those actually cut inward. So if you drop down, say, 50, 60 feet, and you're hugging the walls, you're shining the light on the wall so you don't get disoriented, you will find yourself at one point, at some point, as you go along, you will find yourself in the dark, as it were. You'll see some light, but because so much of the rock you've followed the contour, and the rock above you is extending over you, it can feel like you're in a cave. And that was kind of what happened with Kim. We got down to about 70 feet, and all of a sudden she was kind of experiencing a panic attack because she wasn't sure where we were. And by that, she explained later, was she was wondering, it felt like she was in a cave. And so that was, properly, she was instructed that she should not be getting into caves as a basic diver without the proper training. So she was kind of she was freaking out a little bit, and she was making the "I've got a problem" sign, and she was very, very emphatically saying we need to go up. So I quickly signaled to her, okay, to go up, but I said slowly, I motioned slowly, and I reminded her that she needed to release air from her BC. Because as you come up, when you drop down, you're adding air to your BC. You're adding air to your BC as you drop, so that you are displacing enough water to stay neutrally buoyant. Otherwise, you will sink fast, and you don't want a uncontrolled descent any more than you want an uncontrolled ascent. So I quickly reminded her, let air out of her BC. She started to push the power inflation. Because, again, panic is what it is. She wasn't all full-on panic, but she was really stressed out. And so I grabbed mine and showed her, the dump. So she got that, even though I could tell that her tunnel vision was starting to move in, and she was swimming up. But I got her to let the air out of her BC, and I just indicated kick. So we're kicking up, and I was watching our ascent rate. She had a hold of me. I had a hold of her. We're making sure that we're coming up safe. Once we got to a sufficient depth where she did not feel like she was oppressed by the overhang of the rock, she was fine. And that's a thing to remember, is just be prepared for those interesting situations. And you yourself keep calm. She said afterward that was one of the things that helped her out, is that even though she felt the onset of panic, and Ronan is wanting back up. Come here, you. Even though she was feeling a little bit the onset of panic, she had a hold of me. She trusted me enough, even though she didn't really know me that well, but she knew Tara. I exuded calm the whole time because I was going to, whatever happened, I was going to keep control of the situation. But one of the things she said that helped her out was that I was very calm and that she trusted that I wasn't going to just blow her off, that I was going to make sure everything was okay. And it was. We came up in a safe ascent. We got to about 40 feet, and she could see more light, and so she felt more calm. I just said, let's level off, and we just kind of just relaxed. Tara was actually, working with her as well, giving her signals to just breathe. And then she was good. We continued. We just stayed at that depth for the rest of the dive and followed that on. Now, of course, quickly, right after that happened, I quickly asked her, once she was calm, because I didn't want to task load her while she's gathering her confidence back. As soon as we were ready to continue the dive, I asked her how much air she had, because I was absolutely certain, and it was borne out to be true, I was absolutely certain that as a result of her agitation, that she blew through her air, some of her air pretty quick, and she in fact had. So that was obviously going to shorten the dive, but we were a shallower depth, so that was going to help. And ultimately, I do not beat people up over going through their air quickly. It's there to breathe. What I do try to help them do is understand that you have more than one way to put air in your BC, for example. So if you happen to be a person who goes through your air quicker than the rest of the divers, remember that you learned the skills like the oral inflation of your BC. I strongly suggest that divers practice with your B plan frequently, which I do. As a matter of fact, it's not uncommon at all to see me on any given dive, and I did this a lot in Belize, as a matter of fact, on any given dive to switch to the alternate regulator. Ours are using those necklaces that attach to the regulator, the alternate, and I'll simply hold on to them. I'll take my primary, my Aqualung Legend, out of my mouth, letting the trail of bubbles go out, of course. And I'll just reach down really quick and pop my alternate, and I'll dive for a few minutes on that regulator, just to give it a workout, just to refresh my memory of how it breathes. Because unless you bought a primary and alternate, they're exactly the same. The alternates are typically going to be less expensive because they are an alternate. And they may not breathe as easily as your primary. So it's a good idea to include that in your practice. As well as a number of your backup plans. How you're going to, if you've got a spare air, practice with that. Those kinds of things. So she was fine. We exited the water, kind of, joked about it. She explained further about what was going on in her head, which I find valuable as an instructor as well as a dive buddy, to be able to kind of get inside the head of somebody who went through that experience, especially if they're comfortable afterward sharing what they were thinking, what they were feeling, what was driving a particular behavior. Well, whether they felt at any point that they were totally going to lose it and just be screaming for the surface. I didn't feel that we were in danger of that, but there was the possibility that not realizing that she could have come up too fast, faster than you really should. So I definitely wanted to control the situation, but she was fine once we hit 40 feet. So we continued the dive, and she had a great time. She has great memories. And so I've got just really quick, just a couple of pictures. So this is just before you get to the actual cliff area. This is all kind of high, but you can see the dive trailer. Somebody parked their red truck in front of our vehicle, but you see our dive trailer up at the top of the hill there, and our proudly flying the Texas flag awning, gazebo, whatever you call those things. So there's Kim on the left and Tara on the right. So they're excited to be dropping down, doing some cliff wall diving here. And there's Tara. So yes, it's hewed to the green, and visibility was not as good this week as it was last week. And there's Kim. So obviously I'll be sending the pictures out to her to let her see it. And then we also have a couple of videos I shot. Wanting to get her on video. I loved her wetsuit, by the way. It was a really bright turquoise color by Bear. I let her use my LCD or my LED light. You see how bright that thing is. I had to remind her a couple of times to actually leave her light on. And you can see my wife's got the same light, but it was before they had the LED version. And you can see the difference between how much dimmer, even though that was brand new. Batteries in her light, but it just doesn't shine with the same sharpness as the LED. All right, and then here's a really short bit of video again for her benefits. A little shallower there. We're working our way up to the safety stuff. Trying to get a shot of Tara. She had her light shining right back at me. You can see her. She's about 15 feet away above me. And then we pressed on along the wall. Again, this was towards the end of the dive. So they had a good time. I had a good time. I love diving anyway, so it doesn't matter the conditions almost. So I was glad to get a dive in today. Had a great time. Let's see. I don't think in my hurry to get everything done, I don't think I updated the administrivia. Nope. Next dive club meeting, 18 September at 7 p.m. at Rudy's Restaurant. If you're in the Del Rio area, love to see you there. Even if you're not a diver, just come out and have some good barbecue at Rudy's. And maybe the bug will hit you. Maybe we'll talk you into, no pressure, of course. Maybe we'll talk you into getting certified. We were supposed to have a dive class this weekend, and unfortunately, my students at the last second backed out. They had to postpone to next weekend because they had some surprise things come up. So we're shifting that to next weekend, but that's at a premium. So my last scheduled class for, again I say scheduled, my last scheduled class for 2014 will be the 25th through the 29th of September. So you need to be signing up this week, unless you're going to do the online portion. If you can do the online portion, you can take care of that as long as you get me the certificate and are ready to roll on the weekend of the 25th through the 29th. We can get you in there. And I might have a pretty good class with that because I had a number of folks last weekend just come up and say, hey, I need to get my girlfriend certified, or I need to get my wife certified, or we were looking at getting certified, and da-da-da. So that might be a pretty full class. We'll see what happens. Everybody talks a great game, but it's until you actually put money down, that's when we know you mean it. If you need air fills, contact Mike McCarson out at Broke Mill RV Park out on Highway 90 West. If you go out there like you're heading out to the lake and you go just past the where they're working on the finishing out the loop around Del Rio. Got our foster puppy jumping up here. And then it's the next right after that. You'll see the entranceway to Broke Mill RV Park, and they've got the big cascade system out there. So check them out. If you give them a call ahead of time, give Mike McCarson a call ahead of time. That'll help him out to help you better, because they don't have somebody manning that thing all the time. So he'd like to know ahead of time if you need to come out and get an air fill. So just give him a call at 830-719-2935. Now, if you'd like to keep in touch with us in between shows, you can see what's going on. Just go out to our the DelRioDiveClub.com website, or be more interactive and check us out on Facebook. Just look for Del Rio Dive Club. Or you can send a message through Skype, since Microsoft is officially finally putting the old Messenger program completely to bed. So really their messaging is working. It works through Skype. So just look for TGWD, which stands for, of course, Two Guys Who Dive. Now, if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, and I'll warn you, I'm kind of a political activist too, so I'll post about a lot of things. But if you want to follow me on Twitter, just look for @RobertCFP. It stands for Ceti Fox Productions. So @RobertCFP. And if you'd like to send me email, just send an email to robert.wade@cetifox.net. It's right there. Wow, the weird camera thing is going on there. It's weird. So, yes, you look right there. Our puppy, matter of fact, I'm going to show her to you. Let's go to this camera. So you can see this is our foster. This is Hazel, because she has really cute eyes. See, you can get a close up of her face here. You want to get on the camera? Huh? Looking at me. She is a stinker. The problem with fosters is you have to give them up. Or the great thing about fosters is you get to give them up after they've been with you for a while. You want to look at everybody? Look on the screen. You want to look on the camera? Look. Is that not an adorable face or what? Yeah. Yeah, she took to the pack pretty quick. She and Vala, our actual youngest, have been best buds, playing all the time. Very noisily. They do that. They get their mouth open and they just kind of whine at each other. It's hilarious. So anyway, that's the administrivia for this week. We may or may not have an episode next week. It depends on how the class goes, because like I said, we had to postpone that class for them. So that's going to be, that may be a late Saturday. We'll see how it goes. I will tweet out and post on our Dive Club Facebook page if it looks like we're not going to have the episode next week. And of course, it'll just be postponed to the following week. So, well, we didn't have anybody in the chat room, unfortunately. I love to interact with folks in the chat room. Mike Steed got out on there late last week. Apparently nobody's out there in the chat room today. Love to interact with you folks. So definitely encourage, if you're watching the show, if you happen to be watching the show live, jump in the chat room and interact. Ask us questions, make suggestions, make comments. We'll recite them. We'll read them on the air. We'll interact with you. We won't leave you hanging. So but we'd like to get more folks to do that, and that just adds another dimension of fun and frivolity to our show. So that pretty much wraps us up for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're watching this on YouTube later, please make sure you subscribe to our page so that we can know who's interacting after the fact and what we can do to improve the show. So anyway, that finishes out for this week. That's all we've got, and we will hopefully see you next week on another exciting episode of Two Guys Who Dive. See ya.